Such are the inconveniences of being a scrub running this shit.
Hey, I offered to have Scanner run it.
Yeah, I think next time I'm gonna either have researched it beforehand or have somebody else host it.
I'm only playing. You should have no problem getting viewers back in once you say, "Hey, we have Jennifer and Socks."
Yeah,
People will join like crazy.
I think Socks will definitely help with that. Jennifer too. Words in here, the other person that we mentioned.
Yeah, should we post anything on Kotaku in action, by the way?
Yeah, if you can post something there. I don't
We're
have
already broadcasting, by the way, guys. Just so you know.
Okay, so we're back.
Alright.
Is it the same channel or same YouTube channel?
It should be the same YouTube channel.
Okay. Well, I'll make some announcements saying we're back, but apologize for our technical failures.
Yeah. By technical failures, you mean the person running it not knowing what the fuck they're doing?
Yeah, this technical failure has been brought to you by GoodGamers.us.
Yes.
I'm kidding. But no, it was.
Please look forward to Good Gamers' review of Smash in a few days.
Shrug. It's like technical difficulties, and it has that guy shrugging on The Simpsons.
Is everybody back in here? Okay, good. We're still at 0 viewers.
Okay.
So, Socks, how are you doing?
Okay, tired. I didn't get to sleep until like 6 a.m.
I noticed that.
Yeah.
What time is it there in Australia time now?
Now it's 1:30 in the afternoon ish.
Oh man.
Yeah.
What's your that sleep then?
Twitter handle, by the way?
At Renaxis. It should be somewhere. I'll type it into the chat for you.
Oh, I got it.
Okay.
I'm gonna put out a show here, but we're live, right? Yeah, we're live.
Yes, we are live, and I apologize.
It's okay. Sorry about the technical difficulties, everybody. We had a little bit of a mix-up there, but we're back. We're going to continue the discussion about what constitutes a game. And once more, for anybody new that's joining us, we're going to go ahead and do another roundtable introduction of everybody here. Just get everyone on the same track. So we'll start with you, Bird Gang. You're the one that kind of brought this group together. So
yeah.
Very brief introduction.
I am Bird Gang. I am a writer for GoodGamers.us. I do a column over there, State of Eorzea, and I've done a review for Hatoful Boyfriend, and I'm one of the news contributors over there. Please go visit the site. We would like to get some more feedback and advice on what to do with it, because right now we're just doing what Gamergate kind of encouraged a lot of us to do: speak out about gaming, cover the gaming news we want to, and review the games the way we want to.
Okay, cool. And you have another writer with you. His name's Mads. Why don't you just say hi?
Hello. I write a column called Theory Crafting over there. New story every once in a while. And that's about it.
Okay. And we also have a developer with us. We have Jennifer from UFO Good Studios. I keep butchering that every time. She's actually away. She stepped out for a second. So we'll skip to our other guest. We have Socks with us. She does the daily recaps of the Gamergate movement as a whole, correct?
Yes, that's correct. I'll go over what I used to do. I used to write for a gaming website. I did that for about 6 months.
You want to disclose what it is? Is it like Aussie Funland or something?
No. I wrote for Game Breaker TV. And yeah, and I did like one episode. I co-hosted one episode of the Guild Wars 2 PvP show. This was back in 2012. But that was it. That's what I do. I'm just a gamer.
Okay. Can you give me the link again, Bird Gang, in the chat? But no,
okay.
So you've actually done like journalism for video games?
Yeah. I have. Not so much. I was just a copywriter. You know what I mean? Like
they handed you stuff to write.
Yeah, I got press releases. I wrote stuff, and then I did like a video. That was it. I wrote a couple of editorials, but They
Alright, that's fine.
they sad days.
Ah,
Anyway.
what? Why do you stop?
Oh, what?
Why did you stop?
Writing?
Yeah.
Um, there were personal reasons. I was having personal times, and I needed to take a complete break from reality, I think. So I stepped back from it, and I never went back to it. I couldn't do it anymore. It was unpleasant.
Mm. Well, you're here with us now, and it's really good that you're doing the daily updates. It that must take some amount of work. Like,
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, you gotta follow everything.
definitely.
It's a yeah. I
well,
just do
those
what I can to help the community. It's at the moment. It's all I can
right, but
do.
but still, it's like every day, and it's full of a section of sources and everything. That's that's quite significant, I'd say.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So, what do you feel about the whole what is a game? Or do you think that anything goes as long as it's on a console or PC of sorts? It's a
Or
video.
if it's fun.
Yeah.
no, that's not how a game works. Uh, for me, games like Gone Home and uh, oh man, like Steins Gate, like the visual novels. They're basically interactive books. But one of them's in first person mode, like Gone Home is in first person mode, and you interact with the narrative of the story. It's not really a game. I mean, you don't get better at playing Gone Home the more you play it. Do you know what I mean? You don't get better at visual
I've
novels.
seen some speed runs, so I don't know.
Yeah, well, you know,
No, I
let's
get what you mean.
talk
So
about that.
I made an earlier statement that it takes a degree of being able to be proficient at a game to make it a game, at least for me. Do you agree with that, Ben? It's
um,
more about if you can be good at a game or fail at a game.
yeah, I think there needs to be. Well, this doesn't need to be a fail. Do you know what I mean? But I think a skill and a fail point would be almost core components of a game. You have
But
to be able to screw it up.
I think, though, the thing is that sometimes skill can be qualified as anything from reflexes to hand-eye coordination to some degree, critical thinking, and that there could be an argument made for what some people might consider non-games or, just not games, uh, would be that stuff that requires critical thinking that can have the failures. But uh, go on with what you were saying.
Well, look at the game like Myst, right?
Hmm.
A lot of people think that it's a point and click, right?
Hmm.
Um, but it also had these puzzles that challenged you. You had to do the puzzles that they could have been you couldn't progress until you did the puzzles.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Um,
it's very literal. Like you could not go forward. There's no
yeah,
walking around it.
I remember
no,
in one of the quote unquote worlds in Myst, I got stuck just because I was in this sort of mine shaft cart ride thing where I literally was in the dark and could not make any progress. It was literally the definition of being stuck somewhere and not knowing how to move further.
right. That I think is the difference between um, an interactive narrative and a game. Myst is that point.
And you
Does that
think
make
it
sense?
favors gameplay, or do you think
Yeah,
this is
I think Myst is a game because it requires you to do a task. There's a
Hmm.
task. There is no task in like a visual novel aside from just clicking the option, if that makes sense.
okay? So you feel that other visual novels such as Steins Gate, or visual novels in general, where there's less puzzle elements and more of kind of just taking down different paths.
Yeah,
Less of a
Yeah,
game?
if there's yes. I think they're an interactive fiction. They're great and they're their own thing. That you're using an application to present a story in another way, as opposed to like a book or a comic or a film. And games can do that, but I don't think that they qualify in a traditional sense as games.
All right. Do you think maybe we should just give them a minor name like Gamella, or is it just all right? Look, these aren't games; they're
Well,
just
visual novels are
visual
called visual
experiences.
novels.
Hmm. Yeah.
um, and I don't think there's any. It doesn't take away from a title like Gone Home to call it not a game. It's its own thing.
So what would your argument be then to people who do make that kind of statement? Because let's be honest, there are people who have responded very negatively with the comment that Gone Home is not a game. You
Um,
can choose to have. I would like to suggest let's have two responses. The first is detailed, or the first is your knee jerk response or your quick and concise response, and then the other is your detailed and thought out one.
okay. My knee-jerk response to the negative connotation of not a game.
Hmm.
Um, I think those people are a little shallow and opposed to the content a little by being negative about it.
By saying it's not a game.
Yeah, by being negative in the connotation of not a game, saying,
Okay.
"Oh, it's a complete waste of
But
time."
if it was more offhanded,
not a
it's
game.
like, well, it's not really a game. Then it's okay.
Yeah, well, yeah, but you have to be critical and oh man,
Yeah,
sorry.
I get what you're saying. You're
Yeah,
saying that there should not be this frustration when they're kind of calmly saying, I don't know that I consider this as much of a game, or I don't know that I consider this to be a game because of X, Y, and Z, right?
right.
You also have to consider that like these people are looking for things to buy, and at first glance they might not be aware that it may not be what they're looking for, and like yeah, they should look into it and everything, but by this kind of like all or nothing is a game kind of thing, it does lead to some confusion as far as purchasing goes, because like if you look at a screenshot of a visual novel, it's pretty clear that that's what the interactivity level is going to be, but
Yeah.
when you have these like, for lack of a better word, what people are referring to derogatorily as like walking simulators, you don't really know at first glance what's going on there, and I think for sake of like transparency to people looking to make a purchase, I do think that a classification is appropriate in that case. When people are knee jerk saying this isn't a game, they're basically telling you, I don't want to dig through 20 stacks of 100 different versions of Gone Home to find the game I'm looking for. That's really what they're saying.
I
That or
agree
they
with
don't think that it's
Jonathan.
worth the money. I mean,
Here's the thing: we keep focusing on Gone Home. I'd actually like to go to another walking simulator, if only to help freshen up the
please.
freshen up the discussion. We need to maybe focus on the Stanley Parable a little bit. If
That's
everybody's
a-
familiar
Dear
with that title.
Esther as well.
Oh yeah, Dear Esther.
But the Stanley
Mhm.
Parable, I mean, that was just a remake of the mod, right?
Yes, it was.
Right.
Okay, that's even worse then. I mean, not only is it a walking simulator, it's just a remake of a mod that was free, right?
Well, arguably so is Team Fortress 2.
Yeah.
Team Fortress 2 is a mod.
You didn't. Team Fortress was originally a mod. You didn't know that?
Well, he said Team Fortress 2.
Yeah. Apologies.
All right then.
It's in the same context of Portal and Team Fortress 2. I think they're both technically just mods of a core thing, but then, you could probably also make the argument that that's the same for Half-Life 2, right? I mean, they're all built on the Source engine. The same thing could be said about Left 4 Dead 2, right?
Well,
But-
Half-Life 2 was a retail game, and
But they're
an actual
not.
game.
The thing is that they've had enough changes to the rules and the game and certain parts of the gameplay that they gain enough mechanics and qualities to be considered a game, right?
Yeah. What's your point? I mean, you were saying that it was in the same outlet as Stanley Parable, and now you're saying that it isn't?
I'm talking about reskinned core games.
I think that's what we're saying. Maybe I've driven this car
I think
into a
you've switched
circle.
definitions.
Yeah.
In the middle of you explaining, I think you've switched sides. But no, let's look at Stanley Parable more closely. I mean, are we in agreement that Stanley Parable probably isn't deserving of the title of game?
As much as I love it, yeah, I could see the argument for it not being a game.
And Jennifer and Socks, what do you think?
I'm on the fence about that one. I do think there are portions of it that like the part where you have to press the buttons in order and there's like an alarm going off and all of that stuff. There are parts of it that do have things that if you don't do it a certain way, it's not going to end well. So I don't know. Again, it's levels of things, right?
Maybe a way to look at it. We were discussing the linearity of Gone Home earlier. Maybe the better way to just approach it is that Stanley Parable is the non-linear alternative to quote non-games unquote. It has that multiple diverging paths. It has extensive amounts of interactivity. It forces you to actually go into the code for the program in order to manipulate it to unlock certain parts of it, if I remember correctly, right?
I'm not sure about that. I mean, I'd never played the game to that level.
There's a particular quote-unquote ending, and I apologize if this is a spoiler for anybody, but you've had, I think, almost a year now to play the game, so... there's a thing where you have to go into the code of Stanley Parable itself in order to be able to unlock a quote specific ending end quote. So it is that literal that non-linear mirror opposite to Gone Home's linearity. I think is worth mentioning.
Yeah. But you were saying that there's interactivity with Stanley Parable, and that's what would essentially set it apart from something like a visual novel where there's also branching paths, correct?
Yes. There's the things you have to do within... Sorry.
So does that make it more of a game since there is this interactivity then?
I think it makes it closer to being a game. I can... If we're going with the argument of it being a non-game, and I'm open to both ideas, let me be clear on that beforehand, but in the argument of it being a non-game, it's closer to being a game than most non-games are.
Okay.
Where are we actually moving with this discussion? Because it feels like we're being pretty academic here. Like we're kind of digging like really deep into
Yeah, I think we're trying to throw philosophical arguments at consumer perceptions, which is that's who's saying this, right? The people who are like, this is not a game, are people who are trying to buy stuff and just don't want to dig through. That's why I do think classification would be a better resolution, and it would stop people from maybe not accepting those things as art or games or whatever if they just had their own section, so to speak. Like, this is where I go for the gamellas, this is where I go for this. People do like that, and it makes them more willing to accept it, because like even with adventure games, you've got to understand, point and click adventure games, like they got similar receptions because they weren't like arcade games, right? Yeah. So classifying them as point and click adventures, it opened up a whole new genre that exploded, and people were accepting of it because it wasn't trying to entrench on arcade games. It wasn't demanding to be called the same as an arcade game or a fighting game or anything like that.
Right. So a term like interactive fiction.
Right.
Or gamella, yeah, like a novella game, yeah.
So are we saying that we want to find a genre to describe these things by in order to have them be classified as a game, or to not classify them as a game?
To classify them as their own type of game, rather than trying to be like, this is the same as BioShock and you have to accept it, or you're being a
close-minded fuckwit.
Yeah. I think that's the problem, is they want to shoehorn it in as being a game like every other game, and they're just not. They're not. There's something of their own, which is fine. There's
Exactly.
nothing wrong with that.
I love the Stanley Parable to death, but for me to maybe go forward to somebody who's mostly been playing, like, I guess maybe Uncharted or Gears of War for most of their gaming time, or maybe they even start branching out and trying like Fallout or Skyrim, to try and suggest that this is going to be the same experience as those, that's completely inappropriate.
Yeah, and I think we're all in agreement with that. Right?
Yeah, I wanted to get more input from Socks on what she thought on that, if she has anything else.
Oh, on giving these interactive experiences their own genre, sort of thing?
So that way they could be classified as games, but have their own classifications, so they know offhand what they can experience. In the same way that if somebody says,
yeah.
role-playing game, oh, I know what I'm getting into when I pick this title up, or oh, this is a first-person shooter, I know I'm going to be shooting dudes and all that shit.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with trying to create new forms of storytelling using game technology, like using, the Unreal Engine to make some sort of interactive story. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with that. That's awesome. Do that. Um, just it don't take offense when people say it's not a traditional game. Do you know what I mean? Like it's be what it is. You're an interactive piece of fiction.
Right, and that's what you just said there is so crucial. The it's not a traditional game, right? Because
No.
that says exactly, there's these words like games, and we use them traditionally, even though it's a young thing. Video games are a young thing, right? But still, there's a tradition to them, right? And there's a way, like there are things you have expectations when you call something a game, and so you say, okay, well, it's not going to live up to those expectations, right? But
Right.
you can call it what you want, so long as we agree that those are not. You're not gonna fulfill the promise that this is gonna, have all of these things that are usually common among games.
Right. It's not going to have the challenge or the fail state or any of these other things that we associate with traditional aspects of gaming. We, yeah, basically, it should have its own genre to define that it is different from these other games.
All right.
So,
Well, what do you
so
guys
yeah.
go on?
No,
Sorry,
that's it.
anymore?
I'm done.
All right. Did anyone else have anything you wanted to throw in? Because I wanted to bring something up.
Yeah. Just that that is also like the ideal resolution for like, because they are gonna, stuff like the Stanley Parable is going to have to use a store like Steam or video game stores or whatever. It's gonna have to be sold as a game. So figuring it out, like putting it within games, even though it's not really one, it's still gonna work out for everybody, because there's no other avenue where you can sell these new experiences, right? So just wanted to put a pin on that. Anyway.
All right. What do you guys feel, or how do you guys feel about these games winning awards from Game of the Year, for example, or any at the end of the year? Is this cheat? Is this not fair, or what? Go ahead, Bird Gang.
I was one of those people who was in the very, very small minority that when I had heard that The Walking Dead had won Game of the Year at the VGAs, granted, there's a level of how much we take that shit seriously. When I heard it, I was like, okay, does anybody want to tell me why it's being chosen as Game of the Year? And like the general consensus seemed to be, well, it's so different. And I'm like, okay, do we have a reason beyond that? And then there were more people coming up with like, oh, it's got this great storytelling. Oh, it's got this really well designed other things. And then my immediate thought came to, well, what about the level of gameplay? How is the gameplay in comparison to the other games? And that's when I started to realize that shit like that, I was feeling that it is kind of sometimes unfair to, I feel, prioritize storytelling and music and general art direction over everything else. Like they're championing this sort of push for the idea that these game eras or whatever we're talking about can be on par with these other games. And as I thought on it more and more over time, I realized that's not really a fair statement to make. I don't know. That's how I feel about those games being touted with their Game of the Year awards.
There's also some allegations in regards to the reviews and awards. I can't really get into it, but just there are allegations with people knowing each other over those, so just be aware of that.
Yeah.
When these awards are going out, there is sort of like with the Oscars where it is, who gets seen.
We had confirmation at this year's Oscars that the only reason that fucking Frozen won its Best Animated Picture was because I think a majority of the viewers or the voters on this panel for Best Animated Feature Film couldn't be bothered to watch anything else but it, or they didn't actually bother to watch anything that was submitted for Best Animated Film. So, that already says a lot about these quote-unquote awards ceremonies.
Right.
All right.
I don't pay much attention to them because I don't. There are certain ones that concern me because they come with, prestige and money and advertising and contracts. But like the Game of the Year ones, I don't know. They don't seem to do too much unless you're already getting help to begin with. So
do you think that if one of these non-games did win, you think it's solely because, or for the most part, it's because of connections that were established?
Yeah, I would have to say. I can't say without a shadow of a doubt, but
yeah, there's going to be exceptions to the rule.
Right.
Standard. All right, that's an interesting point. But do you think that they should be qualified for such awards?
I don't see any problem with them going up for awards. It's the conditions under which they do go up for awards. Are they up for awards because the people genuinely think they're good, or are they up for awards because you know somebody, and that matters?
I think that's more questioning the awards itself. I mean, do you think
Right.
if it is Game of the Year, should a non-game be able to be nominated?
Well, that's kind of going back to the whether or not it is a game or not. I would like, again, for it to have a separate category. It's the same
Me
thing
too.
how I feel about that show. The show America's Got Talent?
Oh, yeah.
The problem with that show is that because they don't exclude like boy bands and musicians, guess who won those every year? Boy bands and girl bands. Right. So I do think that there's merit in making classifications because otherwise you just get the same thing every year, even though there's already a show for that, that kind of thing.
All right. What do you think about that, Mads? What do you think about the awards? And
I honestly, well, what are awards for anyway? Like, if you look at something like the Oscars, right? They have these ideas about give animated films their own category because then we don't have to consider them for Best Picture. We don't have to consider them for anything else. They can have their own little spot, their own little corner, almost like the table of misery, right? And you can relegate them to that, and then the grown-ups don't have to worry about it. Okay, so I don't think the idea that you would take these non-games and say, I don't even know if I feel that comfortable calling them non-games, but we shouldn't. I don't think we should relegate them to a different position. I don't. It feels snobbish, and I don't see us gaining anything from it. Like if it can honestly win on its own merits, go for it. Go for it. So long as it's it's recognizably more of a game than it is anything else, yeah, okay, sure, go for it.
Yeah,
That's my
to an
opinion.
extent, it would probably encourage more games such as that because
Yeah.
now there's this whole separate category to compete in. I don't necessarily believe that that would be enough to uh, inspire a company to make a game Ella or whatever the hell you want to call these walking simulators. But but I think you have a point with that. Maybe we shouldn't necessarily kick them to the kids' table.
But are we kicking them to the kids' table by coming up with their own niche in which they're qualified in? I mean,
I don't know. I mean, I guess not because there's handheld game awards. Are they any less?
yeah, I mean, that's kind of the way I look at it. I saw it brought up in the chat. Giving them their own niche. If anything, I guess I feel like that would make them feel more qualified than anything else. I mean, look at how within the subgenre of RPGs there's so many diverse types of gameplay that, yeah, you might hear somebody say, oh, this is an SRPG, oh, this is an action RPG, oh, this is a turn-based RPG, but they don't get to have their own quote-unquote niche in which they get to stand out compared to all other game types like first-person shooters and uh, um, turn-based role-playing games. They are a subgenre. I think the great thing by establishing a Gamella, let's just go with that general term for now, a Gamella genre of game to give it its own genre classification rather than it just being a subgenre of adventure games or point-and-click games would be giving it the greatest respect that anything could be given to it.
And market segregation works, okay? When you start giving things classifications and you market it as that classification, that's actually how you grow that market. So if they want it to be taken seriously by the general populace, that's the way to do it. You don't if you had different classifications of a board game, RPG game, things like that. That's how you sell it. That it's not a negative, and I don't think it's kicking them to the kids' table necessarily. I think it's establishing a beacon for people who want those to go there and
Yep.
find them. It's not.
It happens with me for RPGs. The moment I hear some publisher say, "Oh, hey, we're working on this RPG," immediately, for a metaphor of what's going on or a visual image, my ears will perk up and be like, "Okay, RPG, I'm interested. Tell me more about it." And then they'll be like, "Oh, well, it's an action RPG. Oh, I'm even more interested now." This further classification and diversification compared. It works the same way for movies. I mean, somebody's going to have more interest in a movie based on a preferred genre or subgenre. You're going to have somebody who likes their mysteries, but maybe they like metaphysical thrillers, or maybe they like suspense horror shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but do you want more games like that in the industry?
What do you mean? Do I want more Game Ellas?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say I
Understanding
want
the
more.
controversy that they've raised thus far.
I think stuff like Stanley Parable and Gone Home, and I'm actually going to throw another one in there. I would say Amnesia, Machine for Pigs. I think they are also classifications for this thing can be really cool, and I would like to see more like it, even if it means there's a cost of depth of gameplay or challenge.
I just want to make it clear that I absolutely agree with all of that. I think classification is great. I felt like the awards question, that's where I get a little bit, because again, like what are awards for in the first place? Like it's for honoring stuff that's great. So I feel like that's a different question, but because I agree, you need to classify these things, and you need to allow people to make informed decisions about purchasing them. I think that's crucial.
Here's
Definitely.
the thing about the awards things. If it were honestly done, in my opinion, and they didn't separate them, do we think that some of these games would have won without some kind of collusion or nepotism? That's the question. And if the answer is no, then having their own classification would give them more of an opportunity to win, in my opinion, on their own merit, than trying to push them up the ladder to being accepted as what consumers want. Because that's really what they're doing. They're trying to rig the market. And the market's like, haha, no.
Definitely. Well, here's an interesting angle. Let's assume that, everyone in the gaming industry got together and like, okay, we're gonna call them Game Mellows, and when we do yearly awards, we're gonna give them their own category, and they can also compete for Game of the Year. So here's the question: where do you draw the line of what constitutes as a Game Mellow? And do you think that there would be games trying to kind of sneak their way into that category, if only but to compete and win, possibly? Because at the end of the day, you can say that these awards don't mean anything, but I mean, you can just look at that one Batman cover that had all the fucking accolades slapped all over it, and these are stickers.
Oh God, I know which one you're referring
Yeah,
to.
these are stickers that go on the.
Ugh.
These are stickers that go on the boxes.
No, they're not even stickers at this point. They're slapped onto the fucking game cover itself as part of the artwork.
Yeah, well, it's that. So.
Well, maybe we should get a new perspective on that. Would that be a good idea?
I agree completely. Welcome to the show, Wordsmith. You were on a stream with me before with Oliver, and we were talking about stories and narrations in video games. So why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Okay, I'm Words, just Words if it's all the same to everybody else. I'm a writer and hopeful indie dev working on a visual novel project.
All right, do you want to share the game name or your company or anything?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I guess.
It's up to you.
Yeah, you can find us. We're called Red Ink. That's Red INCK.
I was about to say, if you were about to tell me you're associated with Sakai Project, I was going to lose my mind.
No, that's not me, unfortunately. No, we're Red Ink. You can find us on Twitter at Red Ink VNs. And we're working on a project called Some Experience Required. It's your kind of dating sim type thing. It's not set in a high school setting. It's just young adults, and I don't really have much else to say other than that right now.
So almost maybe like for lack of a better way to describe it, those surviving high school things that were popular on the iPhone for a while?
Surviving? No, it's not. It's with people well past high school age range.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm saying like the well, now I've shot myself in the foot. Never mind.
Hey, Al.
All right, so what do you think about this? I know you're kind of coming a little bit late, and
Yeah.
what do you feel about the whole? Because I know, I mean, as someone making a visual novel, does that upset you if someone's gonna be like, "Well, it's not necessarily a real game"? Like, what is your angle on this? Or your
my honest to God angle is I don't really think it matters, but and I say that because I think when you start looking at VNs, a lot of them have a lot of crossover, especially with like strategy RPGs. Like if you look at something like Sengoku Rants, that's arguably more a strategy RPG, but it's still a visual novel. People still call it a visual novel. And I think if you spend too much time just trying to discern what is and what isn't, then it becomes a little muddy and
it's the same case with Koihime Musou, albeit that is a little bit more subscribed to a rock paper scissors gameplay formation. So
yeah.
go on with the rest of your point, Words.
Well, that's more or less it. But I think a lot of the issue arises from the fact that we are so in tune with assuming a video game has to be a game. It has to be a set of systems in which you learn a skill and you master it. Where I don't necessarily see that that's the case, even going back before video games. Like if you look at Dungeons and Dragons and some card games, then there was never really necessarily a skill there to master. It was about building a story and making an experience with your friends. But I don't think anybody would argue that Dungeons and Dragons isn't a tabletop game.
Definitely. Even then, yeah, I mean, I guess the greatest amount of proficiency or skill that could be applied to it was
Yeah,
knowing what magical items existed or knowing hit die, like knowing information more than anything. I mean, the actual gameplay came down to dice rolls. But keep going.
Yeah, and just to reemphasize my point for Fenor in the chat there, it's like I said, when you get into the business of determining what has more of this, what's more of that, then it just, you kind of lose, like, it doesn't really matter as much. That's my perspective.
Okay, but so are you of the mind that, let's say visual novels, for example, that aren't rants, because Sengoku Rants does feature
Yeah.
a good amount of quote gameplay,
Mm-hmm.
and not trying to be dismissive of it. It has strategy RPG elements. What about something like a traditional visual novel? Then do you feel that it's worthy of the title of game?
Well, like I said, you get to the point where a lot of visual novels, well, not a lot, okay, they don't all treat interactivity necessarily the same. So some have a lot more choices, and a lot of those choices add up to a lot of different things than just your normal, like, I would like to fuck this girl, and then you go to that path. But some, it's just like, okay, it's hard to talk about this without contextualizing it, so I apologize.
Oh, no, it's a difficult question to answer, and I don't
expect
a great answer, because none of us can have it. But go on.
So say you're reading through a route, and there are a series of several choices that don't particularly matter to the overall plot, but they add up to something and give you something more. So you could say, in essence, you're learning about that person and applying your knowledge to it. So that's kind of a skill. It's less and more in some visual novels, but even so, that's where my opinion kind of arises. Where, like, well, why are you spending so much time determining what is and isn't, what is and isn't? I think it's more productive to say what something is, rather than try to determine if it's not something or not.
Okay. Then what makes something a game, then, as opposed to just saying that it isn't? Can I say that, then?
Yeah, well, if we're talking about what is specifically a game, and I'm going to remove video game from this, if that's all right.
You can say whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, so a game is something that you have to master a skill, and I agree with that. But, so, I mean, that answers your question, but just to extend on that a little bit, I think video games have kind of reached this point where they've sort of, and it, not even at this point, it's always sort of been there with, like, text adventures and graphic adventures and stuff like that, where it was sorry, I'm a little nervous right now for some reason.
It's okay.
Where it's I kind of lost my train of thought there.
Take your time.
Yeah. No, but what the hell? Sorry. With text adventures, stuff like that, it doesn't, saying something is a video game doesn't really, it doesn't describe the wide breadth of options we have. And we're obviously talking about all these things in the same space. That's why we're having this conversation right now. So in my mind, it's a more productive conversation to say, well, is a video game an appropriate label for the medium at this point?
That's a really good question. I won't lie; it's something I've thought about a lot myself. It's like, do we gain or lose anything by calling it video games?
Yeah, and I think at one point before the conversation really evolved, there was really no need for any distinction. But because we're trying to talk about it in a more, like, I tentatively use this word, like, academic sense, we're trying to like broaden our understanding and, like, really bring this into, like, intelligent discourse. So it's hard to determine what we need to do in order to accommodate that, because I think the way some are going, you're going to end up excluding a lot of things and looking down on them kind of unfairly.
like yeah, I want to say that I feel like, God, in any kind of culture, you will have people who try to get the upper hand by saying that they are the established art, that they are the good stuff, right? You will have whether it's within an artistic movement, right? When everybody says, "Oh, naturalism is the big thing," and therefore all of the art funds from all of the people sponsoring artists. They will go to the painters who paint naturalistic, right? There will be counter movements to this, of course. Understanding that, arts and games for that matter, all over time flow in these motions where elitism happens, right? I think that is key to to understanding why labels actually matter, because this is probably the most important reason why a lot of people wanted video games to be labeled as art. They wanted to be able to get at the good money at the arts grants that a lot of governments have, because you couldn't do that as a video game developer for a very long time. I think I'm Danish. The first video game to ever receive an art grant here was Limbo, right? In spite of we have a relatively large budget for that, it's just incredibly conservative who get the grants for these things. So it is. I feel like when we talk about games and try to limit what's a game, we have to be aware of what society around us think. If we say something's not a game, it cuts off some of the lifeblood to that thing. I don't think we can get around that.
I agree.
Yeah. To me,
And
go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna extend on something you said a little bit earlier about how, like, to me, video games have always been an artistic medium, and I think I feel like it's just a matter of getting everybody else to catch up. I don't know. I just felt like I needed to say that.
No, I agree. For what you were saying about earlier about maybe we should question about video game as a name in general, we need to keep in mind the origins of that. I mean, I feel like I can go back to the 80s and just see video game slapped onto a box and it being this marketing craze to try and get kids to pick up this computer that really doesn't do anything except play Pong,
That
Check
sounds
out
about
this
right.
NES, man. Turn your head backwards. And
Well,
play
I mean,
Super
This is
Cup.
the era of Super Nintendo.
That was a big thing. That was kind of a big thing that happened with the Odyssey, wasn't it? It was one kind of like core design in terms of the quote-unquote gameplay, but the way you changed it was by slapping those cellophane screens onto your television, and suddenly you had a whole brand new game. So yeah, I can see that whole sort of video games being slapped on anything to make it seem different when it's still the same thing at its core.
Okay.
Hmm.
Do you have
Yeah.
anything to add to this, Socks? I know you've been kind of quiet.
Oh, not particularly. I kind of agree with all of it. I want video games to be considered art by more people. There should be more genres. I'm not opposing these interactive novels and visual novels. I love visual novels. Um, I think that they need their own category to grow. I want video games to grow. I want more stuff. I want more people making more things.
Yeah.
I don't think it should be stifled. I don't think any reasonable person is saying don't make these games.
Mhm.
People who are saying don't make them, they're idiots.
Actually, there are people who are saying don't make certain games.
I was gonna say.
Well, there are.
should
But
we
part of
dive
it
into that?
comes. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Finish up your point, Socks.
Yeah.
No, that was it. I just think that there shouldn't be that level of there shouldn't be that censorship on it. They should be able to grow and be art and be these challenging either narratively or gameplay wise, just innovate, be awesome.
Yeah.
That's all I want out of this whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why I said it's more productive to try to say, hey, I made this, and start presenting things like, oh, what is this? This is this, rather than say, oh, this can't possibly be this. That's really basic in
Right.
general, but yeah, I think it comes across.
I think the issue though is when you're like your consumer's like, I don't feel like this is a game, and you're like, how dare you not call this a game? And it's like, well, I mean, I'm not accepting it as a thing. I don't feel like it's a game. And when we're trying to talk about it from like an academic philosophical point, and we're talking
Mhm.
about people who, like I said, want to buy things, and they're like, I would prefer this to be classified as something else, not because necessarily elitism, but because they're looking for a specific thing, and this is not that thing.
Yep.
I think that's kind of my position on it is, people see classification as degrading it, but I think trying to force it to be being called a game when other people aren't necessarily accepting of it as exactly that is just going to cause more of the degradation, like calling it a walking simulator and things like that. If you don't classify it, other people will, and they will not classify it in a way you want them to.
Yeah, walking
And that's why
simulator
I
being
think
the key point.
that's why I think walking simulator is actually a fair label. Maybe kind of tongue in cheek, but
Yeah.
it's fair to call those things, because when you say this is a walking simulator, you know exactly what you're getting.
Hmm.
I mean,
I think-
dating simulators
I-
too.
I think the thing is that much like maybe the dating simulator, there's that stipulation that comes with it. There's always going to be a negative connotation that's attached to it.
Well, yeah. Well,
And I
I
think
would,
maybe
Well,
Go
even
ahead.
first-person shooters getting negative connotations in this day
yeah,
and age.
because if
Oh,
it's a first-person shooter, it's almost always considered there's going to be a fuck ton of violence, there's going to be blood and gore, that
Right.
kind of thing.
Right.
not
It is. I think it's super key, of course, to recognize that everybody has their own opinion on what makes a game. Okay, and what you see, like what you often see, is people not accepting that other people have an opinion that something is a game or not a game. Like, and that's also, no, right? That's not how that works. Like, video games are so new. There's very little, human history behind them, right? The idea that there's this really strong consensus that means that some person can be wrong or right about their opinion about what makes a game, it's far-fetched. And that's also why I think that these people getting offended that their games are labeled, or that what they think are games is labeled as something else, like they're small-minded. They're not accepting. They're not ready to believe that somebody sees it in a different way.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry. Did you have more?
Yeah, finish
No,
up your
go ahead.
point if you had more to say, Mads. If
Sorry.
not.
Sorry.
No. I finished it up.
Okay, what's up, words?
And that's just why I feel it's kind of important to like keep yourself humble. Like, obviously there's going to be, I feel like the like, how dare you kind of comes from this like inability to kind of deal with people on the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's just on those developers' heads to keep a little more humble. Like, it's about keeping your head level and taking that and being like, okay, well, this isn't a like really constructive criticism for me, so I'll just move forward. But I don't know, at the end of the day, we're all kind of talking about these things that may or may not be a game in a very similar space. So, at least on my end, like I'll never be like, hey, I made this video game, and then I give you my dating simulator. I'll be like, hey, I made this visual novel. What do you think of it?
Yeah.
Definitely, and we need to understand that a lot of people just appreciate simplicity, and I think that's where a lot of this negative reaction to these types of games come from. Because when you look at what is the highest grossing video games, they're oftentimes very, very simple games. They're either a shooter or they're something put out by Nintendo, such as the Wii Sports game, or the Mario Kart games, these aren't games that are necessarily trying to go with some radical art, philosophical angle.
Yeah.
They
They're just a
typically consist of
simple, like,
gameplay
yeah,
where you
it's
can
just,
either
yeah.
become better or worse at it.
Yeah, they're
Go
just
on,
simple. They're just a simple action experience. But yeah, and that's a failure on their part to not really deliver on the mechanics that they present.
So I have a question that I would like to broach in light of this conversation we just had. Right. So what do you think about the people trying to steer gaming? Right. I mean, there
Trying to
are
steer gaming.
Depends on people.
Are you referring to perhaps?
perhaps some academics who feel like gaming could be, so much more if only it did these things and also these things. Trying to, rather than have the market lead where games may lead, having people who are supposed to, think about games and analyze them instead go and say, no, you should do it this way, or games will be better if we do this.
My opinion of that is they're trying to cram a steak down the throat of people who are only asking for pizza, and they're mad that people only want pizza. Like that's my take on it.
Yeah, but what if they ordered a sub and they got pizza? I'd be
Yeah.
pissed.
And I don't mean to say that they're offering steak. I mean that they think they are.
Mhm.
That they think that they're giving people something.
And it turns out it's a tofu
very
steak
close.
instead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a grungy thing that's been behind the radiator for 10 months.
Oh
Yeah,
god.
and I'll just expand a little bit on what Jenna's saying there. A lot of these people, just to continue that analogy, these people will walk into the pizza joint and say like, "Where's my steak?" And when at the end of the day, it would be more productive to go find somebody who's got a really good idea on how to prepare steak and like get them to open their own restaurant for that.
And doesn't this kind of tie back into the mentioning of saying that we do need to have that classification? Let's say that those classifications are restaurants. Then let's say that we have different restaurants for obvious reasons. If somebody wants to go get steak, they're going to go to Longhorn or they're going to go to Texas Roadhouse. If they want a good sandwich or a good burger, maybe they're going to go to Red Robin or fucking Burger King or I don't know.
Yeah.
But don't you understand? But don't you understand, though, Bert, that subs are the superior way? Right? Don't you understand that, everybody, like, I like subs. Everybody should like subs.
But yeah,
Why don't you want this healthy salad? It's good for you. Why don't you want it?
I gotta eat some fucking pizza.
This is so oddly related to my life because I work in food service. But no, like you said, yeah, it's important to label it a steakhouse, and I think there's room for every restaurant in this city.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay, so we derailed a little bit.
No, it's totally it's an analogy that works, and I love analogies.
Some people would accuse us, but I do love the analogies.
I do love food, so. But no, we're pushing like 4 hours for me and Jennifer. Are we done? Are we gonna wrap this up?
Well, let's get back to that focus point that we were talking about. This idea of, I think it's academics pushing for this sort of change in how things are handled. If we're going in with that approach that we need to be telling them why, then I would like to say that there's a reason why we need to tell them that they shouldn't be influencing it. And I'm going to say that look at what happened with movies and comics in particular. Anybody who's done a little bit of brief history or even just watched a friggin' PBS documentary about that kind of shit, they know that each one of those situations went through some sort of experience where a regulations board or a ratings board attempted to bring the whole thing crashing down, and as a result, creators started to look for lack of a better way to describe it, loopholes or backdoors in which they could still get their creative content out. Comics did it by having imagery that implied something was happening, like a phone being off the hook, meaning the two characters were having sex off the screen, or in the case of movies, they were doing a similar sort of thing, like they were having noises or dialogue being exchanged, but you weren't actually seeing it. I think that is what will happen if they actually got what they wanted. They think they'll get these they'll get these misogynist bigotry, these racist whatever label they want to throw at these games. Those games aren't going to go away like I think some people want them to. They're just going to find another way for the creative content to be put out, or they're just going to find and set up a system and organization where they don't have to abide by those rules.
I guess. But I mean, at the end of the day, there are journalists themselves which are painting images that are just flat out wrong about certain types of games, and we can
I
say
don't know
that
if I can call them
games aren't gonna go
journalists, but
away.
yeah, let's use
They're bloggers. Sorry.
Yeah.
quotes around academics and quotes around journalists when we speak, just so everyone knows.
Okay.
Yes.
Not
yes.
actual.
Well, can I finish my point?
Yeah.
Okay, well, these bloggers that are still going to be pushing and writing these, I mean, not all of them, but a good majority of bloggers will still create these messages, these agendas about video games that just simply are false. And we can say as much as we want that it's not going to have an effect on these games not being made, but there are still companies like THQ that are closing down. There are still people being fired, and these are all things that are very much happening. And you need to factor in that. I'm not saying that it's the do-all, end-all when a blogger says that a game is sexist, but it certainly contributes.
Yeah.
It shows that. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, right. Damn, I lost my train now.
Well,
I'm sorry, I got in the cockpit and I
Yeah.
drove it off the rails.
Just say you
Yeah,
agree.
yeah. No, you go ahead and I'll think and try and remember
ahead.
what the hell I was gonna say.
I'll go ahead. All right. I think that's why the people are trying to bring the walls crashing down, because they don't like that some people are flaunting that they have that much power. They don't like seeing that somebody is saying that they're a megaphone. They don't think that it's fair that someone who thinks they're one thing is trying to act as though they have that kind of power.
yeah.
That is
Right.
one.
And then
I
falling
agree.
back on like just petty like arguments to defend their soapbox.
Right. I think for me, the attitude I'm finding is from these academics and bloggers, and even some of these fringe developers, I guess, is this attitude of, well, why isn't EA giving me $50 million to make, some sort of hypersensitive, politically correct video game? They should be, because that's the right moral thing to do. And I'm like, because they're not going to make their money back? Because no one's going to buy it except for, what, 3 people?
I mean, if we want to go with a non art game or non-game perspective about it, look at what happened with the sales for Mirror's Edge and Dead Space. Yes, they were appealing to a niche thing, and yes, they were giving a certain group of people something they want, but they still ended up having kind of less than stellar sales, and that wasn't beneficial economically.
Well, they
Right,
can say that the
but-
sales were bad, but at the end of the day, they still made a Dead Space 2 and 3.
That's true.
Whereas Mirror's Edge-
Right.
or Mirror's Edge 2 is still not out, so.
But it's not Mirror's Edge 2. It's Mirror's Edge Reboot, or whatever the fuck it's going to be called.
I don't fucking know. But what were you
With
saying, Sox?
simplified controls.
Mm.
Well,
I don't agree with the attitude that a lot of these bloggers and academics are having, that mainstream gaming should cater the way they want it to, I guess.
yeah,
think that
if
they
you
are having
want
an effect,
to
or-
see-
Yeah.
They are, though. They are. They're consulting on mainstream titles is what my problem is.
right.
Yeah.
And that crosses a line for me. I mean, when you're messing with the core mechanics of a game, to make it quote more appealing to the market that they're not targeting. I mean, that's
Yeah.
don't want
That's
to-
just how they co-op.
Or to make it more politically friendly or correct.
I don't want
Yeah,
players to be able to kill
don't-
this
I
type of
don't-
person.
Well,
Yeah.
see,
I don't know
this is-
why.
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
I don't know why they don't just spend all of this time and effort and go and make a fucking game.
Yeah, and
Because
see,
they can't make
We're
a
not allowed to tell them to
Yeah.
make a game because that is industrial logic. So
has a lot of
That's
experience.
ableist.
Oh.
Well,
That's
let me try and take a stab at this. I mean, we can ask like, okay, why the fuck are these people bringing on, or why are these developers bringing on these nobodies to act as advisors and shit? But at the same time, we need to think, okay, look at how much of a fucking investment a lot of these companies are making in these games. We're talking millions of dollars, and they're wanting to make sales like Call of Duty. And when the only outlets are more or less talking shit about you because you're not politically friendly or whatever the fuck, you're gonna try and appeal to their, whims, right? You want them to give you a good review.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
And-
you absolutely do. And the idea of bringing on an academic to try to boost your project, to try to get it further ahead, that seems good. Like you would do that in most businesses. You would find a mathematician or an economics professor or whatever to have them come in and consult, and that's okay. The thing is, these are not academics. Like
Yeah, that's why we're
they
saying
are,
they're
they
quote
are,
unquote.
they are activists, right? That's why it was so important that Jen said, these are quote academics, right? They are activists, though. That's what they are. They're not in it to study. Like an academic would study things and they would try to disseminate knowledge. They would
Yeah.
They would not care about their influence. They would not care on influencing something. They would care so much about just understanding it. And this is the youngest discipline, right? The youngest media discipline out there. It is 30 years at most, right? So how the hell can you, as a person who claims to be a scholar, who claims to be trying to understand things, think it's a good idea to get your fingers in and try to take the wheel and try to steer it?
Yeah,
How
it's
can you
proven
live with yourself?
purely in their context. They're rather than saying, here's an idea of what you could do. They're not using could. They're not saying, oh well, you could always consider trying this. No, they're going forward. They're saying you should do this. You should have this character behave this way. You should have this type of character in your game.
Yeah, or you shouldn't be allowed to do this, or you shouldn't be
Yeah.
allowed to do that.
It needs to be more coulds and less shoulds.
And I think I think it bears stating that because these people are activists, like he said, they all strongly believe that what they're doing is for the greater good, that they're doing it because this is the way things should be. So it's naturally incredibly difficult to break through that and like make them understand what they're doing has some negative blowback. And I mean, that's why we're having a bunch of conversations like this in the last month.
Yeah. And
Because they're just not hearing. No, I'm done. That's good.
Oh, well, my point is, I mean, if gaming is an escapism, why the fuck are we trying to bring politics into it? It's such bullshit.
I don't know, because people want politics and everything, because if you don't care about politics, you're not a real person. I don't know.
I
care
guess.
about politics.
I care about politics, but when I go to a game, I want to be away from my problems, and I think I speak for a lot of people.
Well, that's why people are pushing back, because they don't want to.
Yeah.
They
We
went
should
into
push back.
they went into it for escapism, and now they've got people who don't want them to have that. So when they're responding with, "Well, why the hell are you wrong?" and they get told why, they're just like, "Well, that doesn't seem like a legitimate reason to be upset."
Okay.
Yeah, it's just like, you're just a mad kitty. I don't know.
they picked
You're
the
just a
wrong
piss baby.
industry.
Was there anything else I want to talk about, or should we wrap this up now?
I think we can start wrapping it up. I think Words had something he wanted to throw out there, wasn't?
Did I? I'm sorry. I don't.
Do you?
Put me on the spot. I don't really.
No.
Well, you're the last to join, so we're kind of giving you a chance to say anything else you want to
Because we had a lot of talking beforehand, and
Mhm.
if there was anything else you wanted to throw out there.
Not particularly. I think just in the small time I've been on here, we've covered a lot of ground, and I've gotten to say more or less what I wanted to.
Okay. Well, why don't you tell everybody where to find you or your company, or well, not literally where to find you, but shit.
No. Okay, yeah, I'm Words. You can find me at Wordsmith with no vowels at Twitter, and you can find my company, well, tentatively say company, on Twitter as well, Red Ink VNs or VN, and it's not active yet, but it will be in the next few months or so. I'll link them in the chat for anybody that's curious. And thanks for allowing me to come in, especially at such late notice.
It's okay.
And this was kind of all spur of the moment sort of thinking anyway, so don't worry about
Yeah, you missed out our huge technical fuck.
it.
Oh,
Thank
neither.
And by ours, I mean birds.
Yes,
But no.
well, I am a bird. Technology is
Yeah.
still a little hard for me to grasp,
You're
so,
getting there. Nests and computers, they're two very different things. But now, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Bird? Or
Well,
your
like I
device.
said earlier, I write for goodgamers.us under the same name, Bird Gang. On Twitter, I am at Bird Gang, Caw, that's C-A-W. You can find me on there just doing stupid bullshit musings over Gamergate and not much else. Maybe I'll idly comment about something else. I am a bit of a weeb, so I'll probably mention anime every now and then.
Okay.
But with Good Gamers, I'm gonna get some reviews going together. Myself and another writer or two over there are going to be doing a live stream review soon of the new Smash Brothers game, and hopefully in mid or late October, I should have another State of Eorzea coming up with commentary on the new 2.4 patch update.
Okay.
Outside of that, I don't really have any other plans. So, yeah, follow me at Bird Gang, Caw.
Okay. Jennifer? I think she's away.
My mute button was not working, or my unmute button. I'm GM Shivers on Twitter. You can pretty much find everything else about me there.
Okay. Anything else?
I'm currently working with Dapper Swine Studios on a new game. I can't really say much more than that, but yeah.
Okay. Socks?
Okay. I'm Socks, and you can find me on Twitter at Renaxis. And you can see me on YouTube. My channel is Neat Life. I'm doing Gamergate stuff at the moment, but I might be making some more general game/anime/weeb content at some point.
Sweet.
Yeah. So yeah, I talk shit and I'm annoying, so you can find me there if you like that.
Okay. Are you back, Mads?
Ah, shit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, there he is.
You want to plug yourself?
Go to goodgamers.us. There you
Alright.
go.
Your Twitter handle?
Oh, at Tailguard.
You might want to
There's
spell
no
that out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll put it in the
I'm gonna put that in the chat. All right.
All right.
Not that I often say anything informative.
Anything else, or?
Maybe the one who should shill the hardest of us is Shillfish then.
Oh, well, I go last, of course.
Yeah.
I was the host. My name's Shillfish. I am the PR representative of Spellsfire.com. It's a new community-driven site coming up. We're looking for writers or any content deliverers. Doesn't matter if you're a streamer or YouTuber. Think 4chan meets Reddit. It's not up yet, but basically the premise is that anyone can contribute content and anyone can be featured on the front page.
Maybe the better way to phrase it is Infinite Chan meets Reddit, because some people might not want to refer to Half Chan.
Chan meets Reddit. How about
Yeah,
that?
there you go.
You can follow me at SpellsFired. That's my personal account. If you want me to come and host or moderate or whatever the hell, or just talk, I'm more than glad to. I mean, that's how I got put on host duty for this show. I was invited. And look forward to the site. And if you ever want to email me, it's shillfish@gmail.com. And thanks for watching.
Yep, and hopefully this will go a little better next time. I will have this up later, hopefully, for repeated viewings or just for reference. But thank you to all of you who have bared with our technical difficulties, and thank you for watching.
Yep.